Welcome to The Explainer. We spent so much time arguing about what to ban on social media, who to deplatform, what posts to take down. But what if we're focused on the wrong thing entirely? What if the real problem isn't the content we see, but the code that shows it to us? Today, we're diving into this really fascinating idea that to fix our digital world, we actually need to replumb the entire internet. So let's kick things off with this really powerful quote from Rachel Carson. The idea is simple but profound. If we, the public, have to live with the risks of a new technology, whether it's chemicals or social media platforms, then we have a fundamental right to understand those risks. This idea, it's the bedrock for everything we're about to get into. All right, to really wrap our heads around our modern digital problems, we're going to take a trip back in time, back to the crowded, chaotic, and pretty dangerous cities of the 19th century. And trust me, the parallels to today are, well, they're kind of shocking. What you're looking at here is a roadmap of a 75-year journey. See, when 19th century cities were hit with these massive disease crises, they didn't know what to do. They had no idea. It took decades of hard work to go from just seeing the problem to setting clear goals, things like food safety, and then creating standards, and finally figuring out how to measure the health of an entire population. Okay, so for the longest time, the main scientific theory was something called miasma. Basically, that bad air caused diseases like cholera. And, it kind of makes sense, right? If a place smells awful, it's probably not good for you. But then this brilliant doctor, John Snow, comes along and does something totally groundbreaking. He actually maps a cholera outbreak and proves, nope, it's not the air at all. The real culprit was hidden in the system itself, a single contaminated water pump. And that discovery, well, it changed everything. It meant the solution wasn't to just try and clean one bucket of water after another. No way. The real solution was to build an entirely new infrastructure. We're talking modern sanitation, sewer systems, a whole new way to protect everyone. It was one of the greatest public health achievements in history because it re-engineered the whole environment for the good of the people. So what in the world does this have to do with our digital lives? Well, for years, we've been focused on the digital bad air. The individual toxic posts, the bad actors. But this whole story from the past suggests that maybe, just maybe, the real problem isn't the content. It's the code. It's the plumbing. We are living deep inside what's called an attention economy. It's a world where social media platforms are basically built with one single-minded goal: to grab your attention and keep you on their site for as long as humanly possible. Our attention has become the product. And this system creates two very different kinds of damage. You've got your acute harms. Those are the obvious ones, right? A single harassing comment, a threatening DM. We try to fix those with content moderation. But then there are the structural harms. These are the slow burn effects on all of us, on society. Things like declining mental health or the fact that we just don't trust each other as much anymore. And those harms are baked into the very design of the system. And here it is, the absolute heart of the problem. Our current approach, focusing almost completely on content moderation, is exactly like trying to fix that contaminated London well by cleaning one bucket of water at a time. We're tackling the individual problems, the acute harms, but we are completely missing the bigger systemic issue, the fact that the plumbing itself is contaminated. So what if we took that exact same public health blueprint that literally saved cities in the 19th century and applied it to our digital world today? The research we're looking at says this isn't just a cool idea, it's absolutely necessary. This is so cool. This slide shows just how perfectly that old public health framework maps onto our modern digital world. On the left, you've got the 19th century model we just walked through. And on the right, you can see how that exact same structure, setting goals, defining standards, creating measurements, can be used for the recommendation engines that basically run our online lives. And that brings us to the core concept here: accountability infrastructure. Just think of it like a modern sanitation system, but for the internet. It's a system designed from the ground up to find and reduce both those individual harms and the big, population-level ones, always with an eye toward protecting the most vulnerable people. And look how the jobs would translate. It's pretty amazing. Instead of health inspectors checking for diseases, you'd have platform auditors. Instead of epidemiologists like John Snow tracking outbreaks, you'd have data scientists and ethnographers running experiments. It's about building the exact same kinds of accountability roles, just for a new digital home. So how does this actually work? Like, in practice? It all comes down to actually rewiring the recommendation algorithm. So let's pop the hood and take a look at the plumbing. Okay, so this is how it works right now. A typical recommendation engine is a simple feedback loop, and its only goal is to maximize your engagement. Just follow the arrows. Content gets uploaded, it's shown to you, and the system measures everything: how long you watch, what you like, what you share. That data then tells the algorithm what to show you next. It's a cycle designed to keep you scrolling. The problem is, as we've seen, that laser focus on just engagement creates all these unintended side effects, those structural harms we talked about. The system isn't trying to hurt our mental health or make us distrust each other, but those things can happen when the only goal is to keep us hooked. So here's the big idea, the fix. You add a new feedback loop. Think of it like a circuit breaker for the algorithm. This new loop introduces what are called constraining metrics. Now, these aren't just engagement numbers. They come from outside data, like actual user surveys. So for example, if surveys start showing that certain content is linked to a spike in anxiety, that metric would kick in. It would force the algorithm to balance engagement against well-being, effectively stopping the system from causing measurable harm. Okay, so if we're actually going to add this health check to these huge platforms, what do we measure? The trick is to start with things that are, hard to argue with, things we can all agree are important. The research paper suggests we start with two areas that are really critical and, frankly, pretty apolitical. First, mental health. We can use established, legitimate medical surveys to see if a platform is making its users, especially vulnerable groups like teenagers, feel worse. And second, social trust. We can use standard sociological questions to figure out if a platform is actually making us trust each other less as a society. And this, right here, is probably the most important takeaway of the whole thing. This approach completely sidesteps all those endless angry debates about censorship and free speech. This isn't about policing what you or I post. It's about product accountability. It's about making sure that the underlying system, that digital plumbing that delivers everything to our screens, isn't accidentally making all of us, as a society, sicker or more divided. This whole framework just completely shifts the conversation. Instead of arguing about symptoms, we start talking about redesigning the system to create a healthier digital world for everybody. And that leaves us with one last big question to think about. If the apps you use every day had a public health score, what would you want them to measure? What do you think they should be held accountable for?